Hello, everybody, and welcome to Business and Life Insights. And today we have the pleasure of introducing you to our wonderful guest, Karl Sona. And I'm really honored to have him on the show today. Karl has helped over 300 podcasters produce more than 11,000 quality episodes since 2020. Karl Sona is the CEO of Streamlined Media, and he'll share insights on exploding the number of eyes and ears on your podcast. And I'm excited to hear today how to reach 1 million people in 180 days. Welcome, Karl. We're so happy to have you here. Thank you.
Of course. So happy to be here, Nell. It's great to see you again. Thank you for all of your hard work with setting this up. And I'm really excited to dive in with today with your audience.
Right.
Need.
Yes. I want them to know you and your background and the podcasting models that you have developed for yourself and for your clients over these many years. You produce high quality professional podcasts that are, well, podcasts to be modeled after.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I never aspired to be or to own a podcast company. I mean, for those that are listening, obviously it's a relatively new medium. Podcasting has been around since the early 2000s, but it probably really became a thing, let's face it, for most of us, probably during COVID. You know what I mean? So, my story into this space is I wanted to be, my professional background is in medical device sales. And as I was climbing the corporate ladder, and I started to realize the same rap song as you're traveling. So I found podcasts that talked a lot about business development, personal development. I mean, all sorts of topics. And I just became a sponge. And it got to the point where I not only started to take this information in and implement it, which improved my results, but it got to the point where the company I worked for at the time was like, hey, man, you're the guy. We need you to train the rest of the sales team on what you're doing because what you're doing is crushing. And soon enough, my colleagues were banging down the door saying, hey, Karl, what do you think about this scenario? What would you do in this situation? And that's when a light bulb went off in 2019 now, and I decided to launch my own podcast as a way to pay it forward.
Amazing. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, I could be a corporate guy who has no experience doing a podcast, but the challenging thing about it is that because anybody could start, right, you often find yourself in a situation where you grossly underestimate how much goes into it in order to have it reach the people that you want it to reach. And that's where, COVID came along. For many of us, myself included, it was a time to really do some deep thinking relative to where I was in life, and that company I had been with had just acquired. So I found myself in a really unique position to solve some of the challenges in the podcast industry, because many people on this call likely that have considered doing one, that have done it, even though I was having some great momentum and I was enjoying doing it, I reached an audience, right? I couldn't figure out how to actually have the podcast provide impact, but also be positioned to make money. And so life gets busy, kind of putting it off to the side, and you quit, right? And so now it's streamlined. Fast forward to today, yeah, we've helped over 350 companies at this point in time, but we're really giving people the education required on how to create compelling content that adds value. Without value, people won't engage. But beyond that, we're helping them do it profitably, right? And the profitability pieces is where I think your audience likely could stand to gain a tremendous amount of value if these are business people looking at podcasting as a way to market themselves. So that's a long-winded answer, but hopefully, that gives you some context for where I'm coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have. And starting out with the vulnerability that you felt that you had very early on in your development, but then being a person who solves problems and really going through the thought process of what it takes to make a high quality podcast so that it does resonate with the audience and it does have messages that are of value that help people become better communicators.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's such an admirable thing. So as you were working through your own development, and thank you for being vulnerable about your own, where you felt that you were way back when. And of course, tables have completely turned now. There are many of us who now are looking to you for your expertise. And thank you so much for sharing with us. So can you tell me some of the problems that you solved early on that helped you power through your own development as a professional?
Yeah, and so I want to be clear. I am not a professional podcaster. I'm a professional business person that happens to be in the podcast industry. But I think what you're really asking me are what were those problems that I encountered that I also see other people that are podcasting or thinking about getting podcasting encountering. Is that your question? Just to be clear.
Yes, that's true. But still, I still admire your accomplishments. It's just
I
one.
appreciate that. Now, I get my own little chill. Every single week in America, listening to at least 6 hours of this content, it's actually outpaced Netflix in terms of where people are spending their time, whether it be downtime or whether it be time for personal improvement or entertainment, whatever it might be. And so everybody in this game right now that we see is trying to figure out, how do I reach the right audience, right? How do I make them aware of this content that I'm creating for them so that across it and they go, oh, wow, not only do I now know that you exist, I like you a little bit more. And if you really keep at it consistently, I trust you to possibly want to do business with you, right? Relative to what it is that you're talking about. And that's the big challenge, because as it stands, today is, I think, the 14th of August that we're doing this. There really aren't very many great discoverability tools that exist currently to show me as someone that might be looking for a podcast on, I don't know, vintage 911 Porsches, right? Let's say that's what I'm looking for. There aren't any discoverability tools that really help me find that easily outside of social media. And social media, obviously, what a tremendous tool, but a very, very crowded space with everybody being a talking head. So finding a way to package content that's aligned with what people want, actually taking a step back, understanding who your audience is and what they want and what they're looking for, and then finding a way to create that, to package it. When I say package it, I mean the creative and the titling of it, to produce it, and then to market it in a way that ultimately gets it in front of the right people is the big conundrum. That's the big conundrum. So that's where we come in. And the last thing I want to say is, while podcasting podcasting listenership is going through the roof, if you really look into the data now, like top 10 podcasts, everybody knows Joe Rogan, everybody knows like Caller Daddy, everybody knows Tucker Carlson, like the top 10 in the world, they've got like 80% of that listenership. That leaves something like 4 million podcasters, 4 million plus podcasts that are competing for the remaining 20%. So I share that, to highlight two things. One, it's a very competitive space, even though it's growing in popularity. But two, there is a tremendous opportunity, because those top 10, you got to wonder, how much longer are they going to be able to kind of continue to monopolize the top space, right? In today's society, a person that's got a tremendous amount of influence is one scandal away or one something away from, falling out of favor with an audience. So for people that want to get in, that have done great things in their industry and don't mind doing the hard work to really understand what their audiences want, and it can show up consistently, I think this is probably one of the best opportunities for the remainder of this decade, if you can get in and stay consistent and really understand. So that's a long-winded answer, but I hope that gives you someplace.
Yeah, no, I really love your thoroughness, really, because that shows us that you are thinking on many levels, and so many of us need to learn that, and also not take for granted what it does take to stay on top. Well, get to the top first of all, and then stay there. So the relevance is one of the tipping points that I think you spoke about, staying relevant.
And then also understanding that, just because you start to attract someone, let's say I put out a video on TikTok or Instagram, and it's like a little short for my podcast, which is a lot of how we help our clients build that awareness. It's also starting to understand who that captive listener is and what would make them want to come back, right? And that's the other piece too. Like, oftentimes people in podcasts, they just start putting content out, sort of think that they should automatically know what the listener should do next to go forward with them. And it doesn't work that way. Think of it as a funnel. You've got passive listeners. These are people on Instagram or TikTok scrolling away that come across your audience, and maybe they give you 2 seconds, maybe. So your goal is to continue to create content consistently enough, right? And make it very good in quality to have the algorithm showing more and more. But as they become more familiar with you, your new goal needs to be, all right, how do I take this person from casual viewer to committed listener, right? You have their information, right? You've made a call to action saying, go to this link in the description and download this resource, or hop over here to come to a webinar, like what we're doing here, right? And so that's typically the missing piece that we find that our clients have not really actively thought about. And that's looking to close, because the more we can understand who the listener is and what they want, the more we can actually engage in two-way dialogue to serve them more of that kind of content. Because the best thing you can is to really think of yourself not as a podcaster, meaning, oh, look at me, I'm on the microphone, I'm in front of the camera, but to think of yourself as a steward over your listener. And any good steward that understands that, they've been basically given the privilege of having someone give them attention, understands that they've got to ask that hard question that their audience member isn't an investor, right? They've got to deliver that really compelling their audience wants. Hence the exchange of, I give you attention, you give me content that I want. So it's constantly challenging yourself now.
Right.
Think from the point of view of what keeps this person coming back and how do I serve up more of that to them? That's really how it goes. And obviously that's a challenging task.
Yeah, perfect. So what is the secret?
Well, I don't know that there is a secret, and I'm never going to sit up here and say that there's a silver bullet, but one of the ways that we connected, at Kelly Holmes's event out in LA a couple months ago, during my keynote speech was through this framework we've created called the A-Core methodology, right? So as you said in your very kind intro, we've helped well over 350 people plus now at this point in time, primarily because our 10,000 hours of mastery to really begin to look under the hood for what makes content work. And when I say content work, I mean it's reaching the right people, they're engaging, and it's leading to engagement, and engagement's leading to conversions. And so it's a framework, 5-pillar framework that I'm happy to break down step by step that we've assembled to really help people objectively think about this so that they can plan for success. Like A-Core is very similar to like a business plan that anybody who wants to be successful in business would go through before getting into business, give them that foundation. And so the first thing is audience. You have no podcast unless you have an audience. Now, again, I don't want to step on toes. There are a lot of people out there doing podcasts as a hobby. By all means, take everything that I'm saying, throw it out, I'll throw it out the bathtub with the baby, or however that saying goes, right? But I'm talking specifically to like business podcasters. All right. So you're doing a business podcast. Your goal is to, again, create content that gets people liking, and trusting you to ultimately want to do business with you. So you can't really do that well if you don't know who your audience is. So the first thing we do is help you with an ideal avatar. And that is really, getting kind of to the core of who's the person that I'm creating this for? What are they currently listening to? What are they challenged by? Are those other platforms, providing them the solution that they might be looking for? Are there any unexplained gaps? And how do I close those for them? So we actually have a way of taking our clients through that process to really objectively get some good quality data, right? So that we can think about the direction that the content needs to go. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. Just
There's a process. And that's typically what we find our clients aren't aware of. Again, it's never easy to get a fancy microphone, the lights, and all the things and just start talking. But if you don't actually have a clear direction, right, relative to who it is you're looking to serve, it's really difficult to get people to go on a journey with you, especially in the day and age where everybody's creating content and everybody's forcing it down your ideal prospect or listener's, throat, and they're a bit fatigued on who to actually give that attention to. So it's like the most valuable is attention. And that's why you want to be intentional about understanding that avatar. The second component of it is really developing a point of view. So we're having a conversation here, and that hopefully makes this valuable to your audience. If there's people out there that want to do a podcast, is I'm coming from a point on how to do this correctly, right? Because we've helped over 350 people do this, at a very high level, right? But if I just came on and I didn't have that point of view, the audience would probably be wondering, why should I listen to this guy? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you got to have a point of view that is educational, right? And that is actually merit driven. You got to have one that's maybe controversial, so someone that's controversial right now is a good controversial person is actually, I don't know if anybody would know this podcast, but it's a guy named Andy Frisella. He does a podcast called Real AF, and then he has a segment called Cruising the Internet. It's political. They're kind of pulling up news from mainstream media and they're breaking it down. And it's doing very well because he's taking a very controversial stance. And people are interested.
Right.
Another point of view would be a scientific point of view. So if anybody knows, he's got so-called lab experience. He's actually been on one of our clients' podcasts. Shout out to Mark Devine and the Mark Devine Show. He had some times back. But he's, got this great background as this Stanford researcher, and he's able to explain these complex topics in a very narrow and deep type fashion. So people listen, right? You got to be entertaining. Somebody that's entertaining would be, I don't know, any of the comedians, obviously, that are doing podcasts. It doesn't come to mind. And then keeping in mind your avatar is a great way to kind of create that intersection point of how you fit. Do you see how that works?
And you bring up some very good examples. And I might also add Gary Vee, popular caster.
Very popular. I consume a lot of content because he very much is a proponent of what we help people do.
Yes. And I am also Dr. Herman Labs. I listen regularly.
Yeah.
Kudos to you.
Exactly. So audience is really critical. And when you think about who the audience is, what they want, what your point of view is relative to why they should listen to you, we actually take it another level deeper now. At this point, we create a concept, right, based off of that iterative process. And then we go test the concept. We actually help our clients go find these ideal listeners and say, hey, would you listen to a podcast, that covered XYZ topics and that came out on such and such day and time, right? And that was this length of time, to really begin to hear from the market if there is an appetite. Because at the end of the day, the customer or the listener is really whose vote matters, right? It's not the creator. And it goes back to what I was saying about you really want to be thinking about yourself as a steward here. So our clients really find that, that's a very eye-opening, sometimes a very humbling experience for them, because there's a lot of feedback and insight that they honestly stand to gain that they wouldn't have had an opportunity to had they just stayed siloed and just rushed to the microphone and started putting content out. That's been really, really, for me, I think, a very gratifying part of our search that really sets people up for success, And then once we have all that feedback, we help them actually create an offer. Remember how I told you several minutes ago, it's not enough to just put the information out there and kind of sit on your hands expecting that you think you know what people should do next. So you want to create a compelling offer, right? You want to take all those learnings from who the avatar is, to what they're listening to what's missing, to why you, right? To do they actually want this concept, and then button it up with what do you want them to do next? How do we trade them something that's so valuable that they're willing to give us their contact information so we can really deepen this relationship? And that's the A in A core. So that's how detailed I should say we go to really give us a winning chance to stand out of the noise and reach the million people once we start creating the content. What questions talk about that, and any specifically? I know that's quite a bit, but without that part, we're just kind of, we're putting out information and it's coming right back to us. It's like an echo chamber. We don't want that.
No, we want engagement. We want interaction. We want community built around our content. And we want to know that our audience really appreciates and that they're engaged and want to commit. So, and be part of the movement. Because I think podcasts can create change in a positive way. They can in a negative way too, but I think most of us who are on the air want a positive change, want to help people. So you spoke about monetization.
Yeah.
What kinds of ways can podcasts be monetized?
Yeah, well, so the next step in A core is C, create content, right? And that is how you got to create content, but it's got to be valuable content. All right. So typically when people come to us, they're like, I need to reach more people. And I'm like, why? And they're like, because I want to monetize. And what that tells me now is they're thinking about monetization specifically from the advertisement perspective. You know, advertising, sell advertising, do a brand deal by putting some person's water in your thing and charging them, you know, some ridiculous CPM. It's certainly a way to go. But let's face it. Remember how I told you that like the top 10, not even the top 10 podcasts are the ones that have 80% of the viewership. And to give you more perspective, there's like 500 million global podcast listeners. The top 10 have that. Just goes to show that, you know, the advertising, the brand sponsorships, while there's still opportunities at the micro podcast level, top 10 are doing. So I typically try to help people level set, because if you're just coming in to try to get a big audience so you can sell, you know, brand deals, well, there really isn't a big audience for you to grab because they're already kind of spoken for. And that's not to like, you know, drop the hammer on people's dream, but it's just a level set, because I can't tell you how many people come into this space. They're all excited because they think as soon as they turn this thing on, an audience is going to come and then brand deals are going to come. And it doesn't really work that way. You know, not in like a really like life-changing perspective as far as. So when you ask that question, what we specialize in is helping people build profitable podcasts that sell their products, that sell their service, that sell their personal brand. Because that, with the right approach, is more achievable than trying to get some sponsor to pay you tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands on followers you haven't created yet. Because you just, does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense, because it's much more than dollars. It's also your brand, podcast, and also why are you creating a podcast in the first place? What are your goals with creating a podcast? Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And so one of the things that we work on with our clients, and again, we're typically working with like established companies. So they usually already have, you know, a profitable business, and they're looking at the podcast as a new channel that they want exposure to, you know, that can drive people to the core business. So if that's you, definitely send me a message. I'd love to like talk more. But you know, let's say that like that's not you. You know, let's say you have a podcast and you're more or less focused on advertising, and you know, you're starting to kind of light bulb go off, like, oh, maybe there's a way I can sell my own offer. Well, the thing to do is to create really great content and to have a call to action. All right. Really, that call to action points to a Facebook community. All right. Communities are great because they allow you to capture people's information. You can actually have, you know, a little application that people need to fill out that tells you important is on the back end that can help you build a lookalike audience when it's time to maybe leverage paid ad strategies. So the reason why we love podcasts, and I haven't touched on this, this is the C and A core, is it's an opportunity now for people to create very great organic content. All right. Organic content is so important, you know, long form video. It's so important because it's a chance for you to not only understand what audiences are responding to for free, right? Because if it's content and it's centered around a specific audience, the algorithm will show it to people, right? You can create short videos. The algorithm will show it to people because these algorithms, they've basically been created by the smartest people to keep people on the platform for as long as possible.
Right.
So if I create a piece of content on classic Porsche 911, something that I really love, that's near and dear to me, one that the algorithm has already identified loves classic 911s, and then I put a call to action after you've seen a number of my videos that have gone out consistently, and I say, hey, if you like this kind of thing, you know, I'm building a little, we might go on drives together, right? We might, I don't know, trade each other's cars or something, or we might share best practices with mechanics. Come to this group and you'll get all of these details and more. Now I have your information. Well, the beautiful thing about that is that when I start putting offers together in that group, you're more inclined to take the offer. You see what I'm saying? Organic is the piece that everybody overlooks. It used to be just run an ad. Well, now ad costs are through the roof and conversions are in the toilet, right? People overly marketed to. And so the people that are winning right now are like my clients because they have this great podcast that even when they do put out an ad, we typically create the ad from organic that we've already proven works because we've been consistently. We put ad spend behind it. All of a sudden, that leads to a new member in their community, or it leads to a direct conversion. Is we're seeing better costs, better customer acquisition costs, right? Better CPM costs. Organic is really that creative that gets somebody that doesn't know you to want to respond and take action. And so you might as well start really investing your time, again, focusing on what is really compelling content for a very specific audience to ensure that your strategy in the back end works with monetizing your own offer, your own service. So that's what I would suggest, and I think that is the opportunity to really build a sustained revenue generating stream for yourself. On top of that, as far as branding, product placement, advertising, that's all sharing, that's all the cherry once you've actually built the audience. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. I hear that loud and clear. And the building of a community, but also testing your content for free, where you actually spend money on ads on it, is a different approach that I haven't heard before.
But if you think about it, it makes so much sense. Like, unless you've got buckets of money that you don't mind burning, which is what a lot of people do. They just say, hey, let's just go launch this ad. They haven't talked to the audience. They have no idea what that audience is looking for. They go create an ad. They put $30-$50 behind it a day, and then they come back empty-handed, and then they basically burn all their runway. Like, why wouldn't you take a step back, think about who the audience is, right? Look at what your competitors are doing to serve that audience. What's working well? It's not working well. How is your point of view different? And then go talk to people like that and have them tell you what they want. And then why not go create content and allow and this is the one thing that you take, I promise you it'll serve you so well, okay? And that is, as you know now, a very interesting time in social media where I don't need to have 10 million followers to have a piece of content reach that for free, like for free. So social has moved to a merit-based economy, meaning the better creative that I produce, the better organic that I produce, the better likelihood I give myself of possibly having it reach a lot of people and quote unquote go viral. We have a guy, shout out to Quentin Harris. He does a podcast called This guy came to us a little over a year ago, no social media following, a senior vice president of a bank, and said, hey, I want to do a podcast because people are losing faith in banks. Banks are crashing at the time. There's no financial literacy around what the Federal Reserve is doing. I want to create a podcast called What's Your One More? And so we help him, and he's doing these 45-minute episodes, really great education, really great inspiration, inspiring content. And now we're chopping it up. So now he's getting leverage out of creating a podcast one time for an hour. We chop it up into all these videos, 5 videos. They go to 6 platforms. So he's basically got 30 posts, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube Shorts, Twitter X. We put great creative to it, great title, great thumbnail. So people click, right? And all of a sudden, after doing that for just a few months, the videos are taking off for free. This is a guy that maybe would hop on Facebook a couple times a year around the holidays to say, hey, happy birthday or Merry Christmas. Now he's got videos that are hitting 150,000 people, 300,000 people, 600,000 people, and it's helping him grow his following. And now as we've gotten into some different growth strategies, we already have a huge bank of content that we can look through and go, oh wow, people really like that. Let's pull that one out again. Maybe today. Oh wow, that one got 650,000 views. Perhaps we can boost that if we wanted to. And I'm not saying that we're doing that, but that's the level of luxury that you ultimately earn as a result of taking the long road and doing the hard work, which is, again, how do I create the best organic that is going to serve someone and allow them to happen? So I'm kind of rambling here, but I get
giving a nice rounded description. I want to encourage that because your answers are so thorough, and I just love that. So the banker, he identified a problem in his industry, and he made a decision to address it.
That's correct. I mean, that is by definition giving value to people, right? It's like, You got to find a problem and then you got to go out and solve it. I mean, even if you're doing a podcast on knitting, I mean, there's people out there that maybe they're knitters and they don't know how to knit to the next level. And now you have a podcast and it gives them value. There's people that love cigars. I like cigars, and I'm kind of new to cigar smoking. And so I want to know the difference between, a Toro and a Robusto. And so now I'm going and I'm seeking that content out. Boom, there's value that's coming to me as a result. You see what I'm saying? So I think what a lot of our clients are starting to realize, especially our prospective clients that are like coming and saying, hey, I want to think about a podcast strategy, is they're recognizing that the market has been overly marketed to, right? And a lot of marketing has been fly by night. It's been very campaign based. It's been very tactical. It's not really giving people a true honest as to what the company stands for, who's at the ship, from the guy at the top to the woman at the bottom, the guy at the bottom to the to the woman at the top. And because there are so many challenges in these industries, typically consumers are doing a lot of their research, without going to these companies. They're research spending time. They're like coming with their own kind of thought, their own idea and thesis, already sort of constructed, and then they're making a buying decision, right? So if you're in an industry that is crowded, coaches and consultants, B2B, whatever the industry might be, and you're starting to recognize, oh, wow, we don't really have that good of a relationship. We maybe send out a newsletter every now and again. We're not doing much on video. And you recognize that, like, wow, here's an opportunity to meet your ideal client across all these channels for free, right? And reach those of them that don't even know that you exist, because you can create really great content that provides value. It's like you're missing an opportunity, huge opportunity that might not be around for much longer. And the podcast is just a way to help you build that relationship, in a low, what's the word I'm looking for? It's leverageable, right? So you put in some good, obviously, inputs, but it can be purposed into written content, right? Short form vertical video content. The list goes on, and it's evergreen. It continues to live on, beyond that initial point of creation. So I'm obviously biased because this is what I do for a living. But I think you also see the passion around how important this moment is for people that want to take their message as well as their business to a new level around creating value in the marketplace.
Yes, your passion is contagious, and we are feeling it. And I'm excited to know too, what you work with established companies primarily. What about companies that are still in the growth phase, their development?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we just started with this company. I'll give them a shout out, Agrellis. They're a growth phase company. They've only been around for a couple of years. They're raising some capital. They're in the agricultural technology space, and they're getting ready to do this awesome podcast called Dirt and Bull. So, we're helping, anyone that's like a solopreneur that already has a product or a service that's converting, but that in a way that won't harm their reputation, but instead add value. And I think I've already kind of covered that piece of it. And on the reputational harm piece, what I mean by that, if the listeners are confused, is 9 out of 10 podcasts will fail. Okay, just the other week, I think I looked up the statistics. I saw that there's something like 5 million podcasts, but only like 450,000 are active, meaning they put some content out over the last 90 days. And I don't know about you, but when I'm like, watching a video from my favorite creator, they're putting something out just about every day. So 90 days is like, a terrible benchmark as far as being instant creator. That just, I share that because that is the failure rate in this space. And if you're a growth startup and you're thinking about podcasts for some of the reasons that I've already mentioned, you want to build trust, you want to be an authority, you want to be highly visible, you want to be a trusted voice that is educating, your consumer base around whatever it is that you talk about. How do you think they perceive you if the podcast looks terrible? There's not decent video, right? Or the audio's all over the place, right? It comes out Tuesday some days, some weeks. Other weeks it comes out Thursday, and they go to reach for you thinking it's going to be on Tuesday, but you're not there till Thursday, right? Yeah. Or yet you just quit altogether. You come in, make these, they see the last couple of posts saying, we're doing a podcast to ensure that everybody has access to financial literacy. If you're a financial advising firm, we help a lot of people in the financial advising and in wealth management. And then all of a sudden, crickets. What do you think they're thinking in terms of, wow, if I give this financial advising or this wealth management company my 401k, what are they going to do? Are they going to possibly mismanage it? Are they going to take their eyes off the wheel if they can't even commit to a podcast? So like that's what we mean by reputational harm. And so we love growth startups that want to do this the right way, because again, for all the reasons I've already mentioned, the podcasting ecosystem provides them a very unique opportunity, right? Merit-based content can go very far. It can help enhance your reputation. It can be a great networking tool, right? On other quality experts and subject matter leaders that can help educate your audience. It can lead to speaking engagements. That's how I got the big event thing, podcasting. So great opportunities here if you're looking at it as a business and you're willing to do the hard work on the front end to ensure the plan. All right. Now, listen, plans can shift. I'm not saying you have to create a plan and stick with it, but it's very important to have a plan around who this is. That way you can adjust in real time to meet them.
Right. True. Yeah. Great. So I know we talked about the strategy part of podcasting. What about the nuts and bolts? What are the basic elements that people need to start with? Like some speech coaching or some equipment. Can you give some tips in those areas?
Yeah. This is where if you're in business, you like, and if you've been in business for any considerable period of time, even a couple of years, I've only been in business 5 years now, but I've been in business long enough to know that there are so many things that require a great business to grow that I'm just no good at. Right. And so I don't want to sit here and look at the camera and say, oh, you need to go invest millions of dollars to do a podcast. No. You need to think about, okay, who do I need to go find and recruit on my team to help us make this thing go? Because we see so many people that think that they can just kind of rickshaw it together. And maybe there's a small percentage of people that have the technical expertise, something that they like, and they can figure it out. But the reality of the situation now is that the majority of people are like me. They want to do this. They were attracted to this platform to share a message, and they don't really care how it gets there. They just want to share the message, right? Understand that there are experts, people like us that exist, that you can farm that out to. One of the things I'm most proud about, we've helped over 50 companies now actually build the podcast in-house in a profitable way. So what that means is when we started the company 5 years ago, we just had an agency model, meaning come hire us and outsource that to us. And we still work with some people like that in that capacity, but we've since changed the model. The reason why I'm so excited is because, like I said, there's an endless amount of opportunity out there with creating content.
Yeah.
It can be an expensive endeavor, right? It is an endeavor to now go, oh, wow, we thought we were like in steel or manufacturing. You mean we gotta like talk and create content? And we're saying to people like, hey, if you want to continue to be around and continue to like, insulate yourself from your competitors, create a competitive, that safely keeps you and your customers, belly to belly, you need to be talking with them. And content is a way to do that. And so what we're doing now is we're putting out education. We've shifted the model to go hire us to do it for you, to hire us to teach you how to hire the right people that know podcast. Hire us to come in and create a beautiful studio. That's what Richard Lewis just did. I'm literally in his studio. I'm looking at all of his cameras here. We've been hired so that he can do this in-house. Hire us to bring someone in, right, that can actually drive this thing for you profitably, right? That can actually run the studio and run the equipment and do all the social media and all the back-end production. So I think knowledge is the most expensive thing, right? Because if you don't have it, it's expensive. Right? Go out and get it. It's expensive. Which would you rather? Would you rather pay the upfront fee to get the right knowledge so that it's not costly on the back end? Or would you rather go without it, try to do this, spend tons of time, wasted effort, right? Money, just to end up at the side and say, oh, you know what? Podcast's not worth it anymore. And have it pass you up. Like, which would you rather? So
No,
I don't
sounds
know.
like you set your clients up for success. So
Yes,
you avoid them.
100%. And I think that this is here to stay, at least for the next little while. The way that we teach people off of the A core, it could be a podcast today, it could be video tomorrow, it could be something that none of us is thinking about. It's still rooted foundationally on making great content for people, right? For a specific person, I should say. So, the framework is always going to hold, regardless of the medium. To your question about the ins and the outs, I'm really excited because we're now starting to give people, the knowledge to be able to do this in-house. Those that are forward thinking, that understand that media is what will continue to carry them along in their industry. That's what will help them serve at a higher level. Our goal over the next 5 years here is to help them build profitable podcasts within their organization. So I'm really excited about that. I think that this has been the wild, wild west for too long. It's time that we come in and we start to kind of give people some guidelines, some real information that help them do this sustainably.
Yes, well, and I think today's environment really welcomes that approach. We want to be able to control the elements that affect our lives, and you're an enabler in that way, in this space, in the podcast space, giving people the tools, the knowledge, but also your expertise along the way is going to be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to the A core framework, I know we touched on the A, which is audience. The C is, creating captivating, compelling content. The O is outreach. So thinking about how you market it, and basically what I wanted to share there is that you can take the long form video and you can leverage it into short form content, right? You can leverage it into blog posts, captions, the list goes on and on. The R stands for results tracking, right? You can learn so much about your market by studying the results of how your organic content performs. And I think that is a little known, point, a real valuable asset doing content that most people gloss over, and it goes beyond just likes, views, and comments. We're looking at things like time juxtaposed to click-through rate, meaning the algorithm showed it to this many people, this many clicked, and this is how long they stayed with you. That can really help inform your ability to communicate more effectively, to be more concise and to have more brevity, right? Or to think about, oh, wow, we noticed that people were with us for a couple of minutes and then they spiked off on that 2-minute segment that we can maybe double down on because the market came back those 2 minutes. So becoming really obsessive on the results provides a really great window into the mind, into the soul of the person that you're creating this for as well, to circle back on.
Yeah, and they'll come back, rewatch the show and or share, which is that's quite a compliment. And I know the search engines love it when you share content.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We get to the E of A core, which is all about expanding your learnings. At this point, you've got a great understanding as to who the audience is. You're creating content consistently, highly produced, but more importantly, it's, the message aligns. You're leveraging all the right outreach tools and marketing platforms online to get it out there, right? Your results. And now it's time to expand. Everybody wants to start with the paid ad strategy, but now we can come alongside of you. And again, our bank of content to say, oh, wow, what's worked well and how do we throw some gasoline on this? Do we look at a paid ad strategy? And that's a lot of what we do as well, too, is Streamlined. We're just really big on organic being our foundation. Yeah. Paid ads, they don't work as well as what they used to. And if your organic is just not hitting the nail, you're basically shredding money. And, in today's economy, I don't know very many people that can afford to just shred money. So the expansion piece is really exciting. And, there's all sorts of things that we can do with, like I said, driving a paid ad to a really good piece of performing organic content to then drive conversions or bring advertising in. Some of those different things that I think people think about much too soon because they haven't done, that base level work. So, that's what we do. And like I said, it's definitely not a silver bullet because I think a silver bullet implies you just ingest something and then voila, there's a transformation. But I will say, last thing I'll say, we've helped numerous clients reach 1 million people And the reason why that's important is that's that like threshold of scale to where you as a new content creator can go, wow, I've done the work and I've now seen that there's a market for this,
Yeah.
Beyond that, to what I was sharing about helping organizations bring this in-house, the goal within 90 days is profitability. How can I get the right team, the right talented producer at a great cost basis, but then help you think about your offer and leverage all this great organic that has been proven to work to get it in front of more people so you can drive more conversions and sales to your business. So would love to talk to you more about that.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I invite everyone to reach out, please, to Karl Sona, learn more about his services. They're excellent. I can attest to that. And very approachable and very expert resources to have as in this realm. So, Karl, thank you so much for your generous spending of time and also with the generous tips that you gave us and outline the ACORE framework that is the marquee offering that your company offers. So any parting words that you'd like to share?
No, Nell, again, I want to really thank you for the opportunity. This was great. This whole StreamYard experience, I literally almost feel like I'm on stage with you. So thank you for your level of digital hospitality and for the opportunity to come and share. We're really passionate about giving people their fair shot to be successful in podcasting. And the opportunity is real. Anybody that takes the time and the diligent effort with this, we just want to, really give you the information that might be missing, that caused people to basically quit well before that initial point of traction. So if you're thinking about this, I say congratulations, but do yourself a favor and really take to heart that ACORE framework. You don't need our help to go through that, right? You can think on your own about audience. You can think about your marketing strategy. You can think now about the results that you need to measure to do this successfully. So I guarantee you that if you want to do this and you use ACORE, very, very successful. So I hope that blesses and that serves people.
Right. Yes. Thank you. And I appreciate that, Karl. And it's very encouraging, very inspiring. And I invite the audience, members in the audience, to reach out to Karl. His contact information is streaming along the bottom of our screen. And also reach out to me or to Karl if you need any more information about what Karl's company does. So we've come to the top of the hour, and I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Do look for a rebroadcast of this podcast on YouTube, and you'll be hearing more from us. Thanks, Karl. All right, everybody. I invite you to join us again next week. Next week, we're going to be talking about data and how to protect it. Mark Kasparitz is an expert in the area, and he helps Fortune 500 companies manage their data securely, and the data cannot be manipulated, stolen, or compromised in any way. So do join us next week to listen to Mark Kasparitz. See you then, 4 o'clock Pacific.